Killers on it. I'll put it into motion for you in just a bit. If you're plotting at 25 north, 85.0 west to 250 miles to southwest of Havana, winds are 30, and it is drifting north at 5 miles per hour. Well, let's go ahead and show you why it was named a tropical depression. Big thunderstorms and showers yesterday. Thought that was worth a little investigation. You can see the outflow, some of the cirrus bands beginning to outflow in through here. So something's going on in the atmosphere down through here. And yeah, sure enough, we had a depression, and it continues to just basically sit here and drift northward very, very slowly. The forecast is for it to continue to do so and possibly even cross over southeastern tips of Florida, the southeastern tip of Florida, as we go on through the weekend, and possibly by Sunday night be just off the coast of Miami as a tropical depression. But again, we got some big barriers to cross in through here for development. It's got to go over the big mountains of Cuba. It's got very, very strong westerly winds in the upper atmosphere over South Florida right now. It's got to contend with. So again, the good news here with this type of thing is, actually there's two pieces of good news. A, it's not going to develop very, very quickly, and if it does, it's going to be a miracle. Secondly, if it just sits here and drifts slowly to the north, that means a prolonged period of rain for South Florida, and that is exactly what they need. Heading to San Juan today, folks, bring the lightest material you can. Highs up to 95 degrees today expected in San Juan, and no rain. Here we go, back to the USA. New England's looking good. Low clouds here and there in the mountains. They should give way to partly cloudy skies, but everybody else sunshine galore. Down south we go. Nice day in through here, but it is along the frontal boundaries that we find most of the action this morning, and we are going to see it again this afternoon. Very, very heavy rains have moved through Missouri as well as into Illinois, and if we head west of that, it's all smooth sailing, as Bruce and I were talking about. And guess what? That's what's heading your way this weekend. Let's go ahead and talk about the airports a little bit this morning.
Hurricane Awareness Week in South Carolina, so keep in tune with the tropical updates in your part of the country. As we check on the 1990 hurricane names for the Atlantic Ocean, they range from Martha to Wilfred. And as we take a look at the tropical storm origins and paths during the month of June, we find the most likely areas for development shaded in the red in the western Caribbean and the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, and the most likely paths along these blue lines. As we take a look into that very area, nothing much happening in the western or southwestern Gulf of Mexico, and not too much going on in the western Caribbean. But out in the Atlantic Ocean, we do find some showers and thunderstorms associated with a tropical wave way down to the south, and that's our tropical storm Boris. It's in the Pacific, and it is moving away from land. No threat to any land areas. As we take you into the Caribbean, we roll the clouds into motion for you, and the conditions here are not favorable for development as we have low pressure in the upper atmosphere. There are some light showers around San Juan in Puerto Rico right now, and earlier this morning there were some showers around Guadalupe. Here you can see the clouds and showers and thunderstorms associated with that tropical wave, which is steaming to the west. Aside from that, a few heavy thunderstorms down around Central America, not showing any organization. In the Gulf of Mexico, all is quiet. Not much going on here. And here's Tropical Storm Boris. It has reached its maximum intensity, according to the Hurricane Center, and it should continue to move west, move over colder waters, and it should be weakening. Now let's take a look ahead with Marnie.
Thanks a lot, Mark. And the look ahead is sponsored by Monsanto, makers of Roundup grass and weed killer.
Season, traditionally or climatologically, if we could anticipate any kind of tropical storm or hurricane development, we'd look to the spawning ground of the southern Gulf of Mexico and the western Caribbean Sea. That's where the water temperatures are warm enough to sustain one of these storms and help it to grow. And with a front that may sag through and stall out here in the Gulf, that could create some low pressure that would help instigate the storm development. Here's a look at the big blue marble, current situation, and your eye goes directly to that big blob of enhanced clouds, which is Hurricane Boris. Upgraded to a hurricane over the last 24 hours. Top sustained winds are at 80 miles an hour. It is moving northwest at about 11. Its location 895 miles west of Acapulco, Mexico, so it's well out in the Pacific, and its Pacific coordinates 16.3 north, 113.4 west. And moving in that northwesterly direction should eventually take a little bit more of a bend to the west, and that will take it farther out to sea. We're not worried about any threat to land whatsoever, and it should weaken over the next 48 hours. Stalled front in the northern Gulf responsible for the thunderstorms we see scattered about, but other than that, the Gulf looks scoured clear of clouds, looking in good shape. We look to the Caribbean, put this satellite picture into motion, and as we do so, see a pretty strong westerly flow if you look at the clouds and how they're moving. That's generally indicative of not going to see any kind of development here. A few, again, showers and storms scattered about the central Caribbean, but no problems here whatsoever. The intertropical convergence zone in the Atlantic Ocean and off the coast of Africa. A couple of blobs well out to there, but it's pretty far south and pretty early in the season to anticipate any development here. So all things considered.
We have an active area that might possibly develop into a depression. And in the Caribbean, we have a few more clouds than we've been seeing, but nothing that we're concerned about yet. Well, Boris, the thunderstorms are completely decoupled from the low-level circulation. Right down here it is, 315 miles west of Cabo San Lucas. What we're watching here now carefully is to see whether this moisture that's coming up into southern California and southern Arizona and southern New Mexico is going to bring any showers. Right now, it looks as if there'll be at least some isolated showers with it. Tomorrow, most likely, and we'll be watching that and letting you know what the situation actually is. In the Gulf of Mexico, it's nice and clear in the west, and down here in the Caribbean and the southeast Gulf, though, that you can see that there are some areas there where we have some concentrations of showers. Now let's go to the Caribbean, take a closer look at that. We'll put this into motion and show you what the motion has been here. And right in this area north of Honduras and east of Belize, it's getting a little bit concentrated, but certainly not enough there to worry about. Let's show you what we look for in June, though, and that is the very area that we look for in June to see whether or not we might possibly get some development. So we bypassed that already, I see. Nothing off the coast of Africa, and just east of the Antilles, we have a few showers there, but nothing really very much. Now let's go to Rich, and he'll tell us what's going on here in the U.S. Rich?
Missouri, some of these capable of dumping very heavy rains. Let's take a look at the forecast now, and we're going to
especially in the Pacific side, we still have tropical depression Boris as once a hurricane, and down here about 800 miles south of Cabo San Lucas we have a new depression, and I think that's going to be a tropical storm in 12 to 24 hours. We also have quite a few thunderstorms in the western Caribbean and the southeast Gulf of Mexico. We'll kind of detail all that for you. First of all, let's talk about Boris. It's very difficult to see the center of circulation, but it's here west-northwest of Cabo San Lucas. Top winds are 25 miles an hour, and the circulation center is moving north 12 miles an hour. Now, you'll notice some moisture streaming up toward Southern California and Arizona. I think there'll be scattered thunderstorms there today, but tomorrow there may be more significant rains, especially in Arizona. Let's go ahead and look at a loop of that. We'll put this in motion and show you. This is Boris down here, and this will show you about 12 hours of motion. Now, there's a trough of low pressure about to dig in here, and by Saturday, by tomorrow, that's going to bring pretty copious amounts of moisture to the southwest, and it could be some significant rain in Arizona. Now let's go ahead and look in the Gulf. Well, first of all, we'll talk to you about the brand new depression. Top winds are 35 miles an hour. It's 800 miles south of Cabo San Lucas, moving toward the west about 12. We think this will be a tropical storm in 12 to 24 hours, and very likely a hurricane within 48 hours, but it's way to the south and moving west, not affecting any land area at all. Now let's go to the Gulf of Mexico. And as we go to the Gulf, we'll show you not much in the western Gulf, but lots of thunderstorms in the southeast Gulf and in the Caribbean Sea as well. And nothing is going to develop here in the next day or so, but we're going to be watching this with increasing interest, I think, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Farther out in the Atlantic, not much off the coast of Africa. You can see a very active intertropical convergence zone right down in this area, but that is way to the south and nothing expected to develop there. Lots more coming up on the Weather Channel. Stay tuned.
you have difficulty. Remnants of Boris, just mainly low-level circulation now, some cloudiness. The most significant thing we expect to come out of this system will be a deep storm in the upper levels dropping off the California coast. Could take a large chunk of this and sweep it right up into the western third of the country. That could mean some locally heavy rainfall. But as far as the tropics themselves are concerned, this is what we're watching very carefully. This system, a depression moving west at about 11 miles an hour. It's 820 miles south-southwest of Cabo San Lucas. It continues to move off to the west. It should intensify gradually over the next 24 hours. A big increase in the amount of showers and thunderstorms in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. There is a fairly large upper-level trough there.
Tropical storm again over the Pacific Ocean. Also pretty active over Central America. Showers and thunderstorms here out over the Gulf of Mexico as well. Showers and thunderstorms. Here's a better look at this with an infrared picture. These oranges right here and yellows indicate high cloud tops and powerful thunderstorms around this tropical storm. Let me step aside. 40-mile-per-hour winds. They are some gustier ones with it. Counterclockwise circulation with that storm system. Cristina moving northwest at 6 will continue to do so and then curve more westward In addition to that, will intensify over the next 24 to 36 hours, and we'll keep our eye on it as it heads out to the open waters.
Indicated by the color code at the top of the screen. Indicated by the color code at the top of the screen.
We'll go ahead. Cristina, the third of the year in the Pacific, and it's looking very healthy, and it looks like it's growing pretty rapidly on this particular satellite photograph. It could become a hurricane in a day or two. Also an upper low, and this moisture was remotely now associated with Boris, a former hurricane. Now all that is blossoming into showers and thunderstorms in much of the west and southwest. Even some rain down to Southern California and some flash flood watches, or warnings even, in eastern San Diego County out in the desert. Some rain and clouds on into the Pacific Northwest, and also some drier air punching on down from Canada through the upper Midwest, the lakes, drying out the track for the Belmont Stakes today in New York after some rain in the morning. The sun broke out and things dried out, although there are some showers threatening to attack the New York area from the New Jersey direction in the next couple of hours. Big ones beginning to die out now in Kentucky, reform in Tennessee, and also parts of Georgia and Alabama. The current weather map shows you what's been going on. This front relentlessly pushing on toward the east coast. A little bit of a respite in that warm air, and then cool Canadian air headed in that direction. Even some drier air headed for the southeast. Thank goodness for the southeast. As the monsoonal type moisture, this isn't the monsoon season, but the moisture kind of looks like it in the southwest. A big trough of low pressure off the coast threatens to make the weather kind of miserable for a while in the west. We're looking at the 11 o'clock Mountain Time expiration of a tornado watch, Wyoming and Nebraska, and in Colorado till 8. Now, if you do live in any of these watch areas, be very careful and stay tuned to the Weather Channel. Keep your eyes peeled to the sky and think of what you might do if an actual severe thunderstorm or tornado warning is issued. Right to the east coast, including the Canadian border, they are watching for severe weather. Now, back to the west, we have had an unusual situation. A needed moisture, yes, you had it from the remnants of Boris, and an upper low kind of spinning around. So the showers have broken out. They started around Tucson and Nogales, Arizona, and they've moved back to California and up toward Utah. Now, San Diego got 38/100ths of an inch of rain. The normal for the entire month of June is 0.05, so you can see how unusual that is, and more rain to come there. The Great Basin getting its feet wet with over 1/2 inch. Possible flash flooding all those areas. The southern high plains in the east looking for some pretty good rains, too. You'll want to stay tuned to the Weather Channel. We have the 5-day business planner up next.
And we've got quite a bit of thunderstorm activity, one heading toward the Lesser Antilles, a conglomerate here, Western Gulf into the Caribbean, Western Caribbean, and a tropical storm out over the Pacific Ocean. We'll show you that first of all. Let me step aside, take a better look at this. 660 miles south-southwest of Cabo San Lucas, tropical storm Cristina, and we're looking at 65-mile-per-hour winds. Here's the center of circulation here, clusters of storms north, west, and south of the center right now, moving west at about 10 miles an hour. The latest photograph does not show a great amount of intensification. It's slowly increasing, it appears to be anyway, over the next 24 hours or so, but it is also heading toward colder waters. I think we've got an infrared photograph, satellite picture of this that we can show you over the past few hours anyway. Do we have that? I think I see it. There it is now. And these are the heaviest thunderstorms. Look at what it looked like about 6 to 10 hours ago. The big thunderstorms have died away. Now we do see some redevelopment here as the storm continues. You can sort of pick up that westward drift of the whole conglomerate of thunderstorm activity associated with this tropical storm southwest of Cabo San Lucas by 660 miles, moving toward colder waters, and that will spell the demise of this tropical storm. It might reach hurricane strength before it dies away, though, over the next 12 to 24 hours. Gulf of Mexico, upper-level storm system here, a cold upper-level storm system setting off instability in the showers and thunderstorms, quite numerous, over the Gulf into western Texas, and we can see some over Mississippi and Florida, too. Nothing of tropical nature developing here. Over the Yucatan, showers and thunderstorms there, extending across Central America. Pretty active areas of thunderstorms. Here's the next batch of showers with this wave of low pressure moving toward the Lesser Antilles. We don't expect much development out of that, but we will continue to monitor that situation as we do in Alaska as well. Watch these clusters of storms come off Africa into the Atlantic. Pretty far south and, of course, too far east for this time of year to really worry about. Right now, Carl is back on the mainland. He's got our weather coast to coast.
important reminder, all you residents of Florida, Hurricane Awareness Week through the 16th of June. Of course, we're in the hurricane season now. Fortunately, nothing going on. We do have a weak tropical low, or a tropical storm that's over in the eastern Pacific named Cristina. And its top wind's still about 55 miles per hour, moving to the west-northwest at about 10 miles per hour, and it's located about 680 miles to the southwest of Cabo San Lucas, which is off the Baja of California. Let's put it into motion, shall we? And you can see it's just kind of falling apart here, and as we do, well, maybe we're not going to get into motion here, but nevertheless, it is kind of just falling apart at the seams. There we go, and you can see here it's just kind of disintegrating. All the convection is lost, and as it continues to move into colder waters, it should eventually dissipate, and at this time, it should not affect the southwestern United States like previously thought with this moisture band as it comes in contact with a big upper level low. Okay, let's get back to the weather map right now and look at the Gulf of Mexico. We do notice some storms across the Bay of Campeche, but nothing organized. It's all moving too fast, and we certainly don't have anything to benefit the development of any tropical low, and that is good news for all the folks along the Gulf Coast, something they do not want to see. And if it's going to develop, usually at this time of the year, this is where it does form. Now, also some other good news. We have a tremendous upper-level low that's spinning its wheels in the Atlantic Ocean that is providing a strong southwesterly flow aloft, just shearing off any tropical waves. They cannot develop. So as they move towards the west, they just become disorganized and fall apart completely. Good news number 2. Okay, good news number 3, it's too early in the season yet for any tropical development over the intertropical convergence zone in the eastern Atlantic and off the coast of Africa. Coming up, we'll take a look at the...
And they're coming up into the Gulf of Mexico. We've been watching that very carefully though this morning. Don't see any evidence of any circulation developing so far. The pressures are high, so we've got plenty of time to watch that. Out in the Pacific, fairly active out there. One little disturbance now southeast of Acapulco, about 800 or 900 miles, might develop into something. In the meantime, we've had Elida here for some time. That's been downgraded now to a tropical storm this morning. It's moving toward the west a bit faster than it was, about 14 miles an hour. Top wind 65 miles an hour. It's beginning to get over quite a lot colder water. Right now, the temperature underneath is about 79 degrees, the sea surface temperature. And by tomorrow, it'll be quite a bit cooler than that. Not enough, we don't think, to sustain a tropical storm. So we think that will be reduced to a depression shortly thereafter. Well, there's the Gulf of Mexico with the most showers and thunderstorms we've seen in it for a long, long time. Some showers now up in the western Gulf. We have a low in the upper atmosphere way back here now, kind of drifting toward the west. We have a high building aloft at high elevations in the Caribbean, and that usually is conducive for some kind of development. But as we watch it today, so far, no pressure falls, and until we see some pressure falls and some evidence of a circulation in the low levels, we're not going to be worried about it. Let's put this into motion now, a little different perspective here in the picture, and here we'll see what the motion has been over about 12 hours or so. Now, it looks very much to us as if the main activity of this is going to be pretty much over the Yucatan Peninsula today, and since it's over land, no tropical system is going to develop at the center over land. But when this gets out here in the western Gulf, west of the Yucatan Peninsula tomorrow, we think it might have a little better chance, and we're going to watch it very, very carefully. We're thinking in terms now, if anything did develop, it would be somewhere in the western Gulf that might want to be watching that. But right now, no sign of any development, and we'll let you know if there's any change in that at all. Let's now take a different view of the Caribbean Sea. On this picture, we can see a little bit farther south, and we see some very, very heavy thunderstorms. This is Nicaragua here. Costa Rica is right there, and these showers are just offshore and onshore, so we know they're getting pretty heavy rain. And we call your attention out here in the Atlantic. We have a low primarily in the upper atmosphere, but what's happening there is that south of this low we have strong westerly winds over the eastern Caribbean, and that's going to eliminate any chance for development there, and it's going to keep everything way to the south. Let's go now across the Atlantic. We'll show you all the way over to Africa. If we're looking at an intertropical convergence zone that's pretty active right in this area here, and what we call the Sahel, the sub-Saharan region, where they've had about a 20-year drought, seems to be getting a little more rain this year, and we're going to have to wait and see what that might portend for the hurricane season a little later in the season. Well, now let's come back
across most of New Hampshire, Vermont, and also in the western parts of Maine. Looks like a rainier afternoon here this afternoon with some dying thunderstorms that caused some very heavy rainfall this morning across eastern Minnesota, much of central and southern Wisconsin, over towards Chicago and Rockford too. These showers and storms beginning to dissipate now over the Ohio Valley. Could be looking at some more big storms redeveloping later on across Minnesota, Iowa, and across the upper Great Lakes states as well. As far as temperature,
140 miles west of Cabo San Lucas, right here. So the storm continues its westward track. Highest winds of 50 miles per hour, expected to slowly weaken. Actually, at times it might only be another 12 to 24 hours before this thing is gone into the colder waters. Another tropical storm, actually, a tropical depression has formed south of Acapulco, about 400 miles or 480 miles south-southwest of Acapulco, moving westward as highest winds are about 30 miles per hour. Slow strengthening is expected with this system as it pushes in that direction. In the meantime, the Gulf of Mexico, we've seen quite a bit in the way of showers and thunderstorms. Last night, a big concentration right here from the southeastern Gulf of Mexico into the northwestern Caribbean Sea. Still, there are some showers there, and in the Gulf of Mexico, some showers and thunderstorms. The upper level winds have become more anticyclonic, or what we would say a high pressure area has built in over the region, and that is typically favorable for some kind of development. But there is some good news here. Pressures have not fallen. Just checking the latest 24-hour pressure falls in this whole area, and they have not fallen. So if anything develops, it's going to be very, very slow to occur because you have to have the surface pressures fallen or falling for an area of low pressure to deepen, and that is not happening right now. There's also some good news in the fact that it doesn't seem as if anything's developing quickly here, and as it pushes westward, it promises or at least brings the potential for some beneficial, very beneficial rains to the Texas coastal bend on south and to South Texas. They could really, really use some rainfall. So that's what's going on. An upper air anticyclone over the area, and here is our tropical storm Elida pushing on toward the west away from the Mexican coast. All right, let's head into the Caribbean Sea and find things generally quiet. Another tropical wave pushing west to the Lesser Antilles, and that is nothing right now to be too concerned with. Checking on the western region.
Things of interest. There we see the Pacific, the intertropical convergence zone. We have a new tropical depression out here, which we'll look at in greater detail in just a moment. But as you can see here, most of the cloudiness, although very unorganized, is off the eastern seaboard of the U.S. We've had a persistent area of low pressure way off the Carolina coast for quite some time, and a general trough of low pressure in the upper atmosphere throughout all the eastern Caribbean on into the Atlantic. Let's put this into motion for you, and as we do, we can see that the clouds are all moving to the north and northeast in association with this area of low pressure winding around it. Then we have a little easterly wave here coming in toward the Windward Islands, but this is going to interact with the trough. And very commonly when these waves come on in, the trough of low pressure flares up the thunderstorms. But because of the presence of the trough, we don't expect any circulation or any development from that particular system. We have had an area of disturbed weather in the northwest Caribbean off the coast of Jamaica for several days now, but ship reports do not indicate any kind of a circulation here. Just something we'll have to watch over the next few days, some thunder showers associated with that particular disturbed weather area. And again, if these stay around for several days, sometimes in the long run they amount to something more, but that's just something we'll have to look at down the road a piece. Let's go back down to the maps, and we have a clear Gulf of Mexico to show you. Otherwise, a new tropical depression has formed, and you can see it's about 220 miles centered southwest of Acapulco. 35-mile-an-hour winds moving very slowly to the west-northwest, and all indications are that this very well could become a tropical storm within 48 hours. But again, it's in the Pacific. It is drifting to the west-northwest, so it's just something we'll have to keep an eye on again over the next couple of days.
Eastern sections of the Pacific Ocean moving away from land, and certainly of no immediate threat to anybody unless perhaps some shipping interest. Right here as we work our way off to the south and southwest of Acapulco, Mexico, track some disturbances eastward across Central America. We'll get to those shortly. Let's give you some more information on Douglas. Fourth named storm of the season for the eastern Pacific, about 235 miles southwest of Acapulco with maximum sustained winds about 40 miles per hour. And we think there's a pretty decent chance that Douglas may well achieve hurricane status, and let's say 2 to 3 days down the road. Moving to the west-northwest at about 7 miles per hour, so you can see that if it continues in that course, that would continue to take us further and further away from land.
Rather closely. One of them is a tropical storm. That's always off the coast of Mexico. It's not in the Atlantic. We continue to watch in the Caribbean Sea, though, a disturbed area of weather that's been with us for the last several days. So far, no signs of organization. This is our tropical storm, and there's a little bit of concern here along the west coast of Mexico, not so much because of the winds, but because of possible flooding. So at Michoacan and Guerrero and Jalisco states here on the southwestern part of Mexico, there's a possibility of some flooding as this tropical storm moves along toward the northwest about parallel to the coast. Right now the top winds are 50 miles an hour. It seems to be increasing. We think it's doing it rather slowly, but it does have a chance, we think, to become a hurricane. However, as time goes by, we expect to see it to turn a little bit more toward the northwest, or the west-northwest, and maybe not get any closer to the coast than it is now. We'll certainly be keeping you up to date on that. This is a big picture in the Atlantic. We have a number of tropical waves out here in the East Atlantic moving toward the west, but they're running into troughs in the upper atmosphere. On account of that, they're not really expected to do anything. This is the area in the Caribbean. We'll focus in on that just a bit more, put it into motion for you, and show you the motion over the last 12 hours. That's Jamaica. The Cayman Islands are right here. This is Nicaragua, Honduras, Cuba, and the Isle of Pines. Now, the very fact that this thing has been as persistent as it is makes us continue to watch it. We don't think conditions in the atmosphere are quite right yet for it to develop very much. That could change in a day or so, and we'll certainly keep you advised. Now let's go to the Gulf of Mexico. As we go to the Gulf, we find nothing much in the Gulf itself. Down here, though, in the Caribbean Sea, you can see that disturbance near the Cayman Islands that I just spoke about. Now let's go to Tom Moore, and he'll take us.
Zone right here south of Mexico, and we still have the tropical storm Douglas, and it's about 40 miles south of Manzanillo, and they've had about 4 inches of rain the past 24 hours with the rain from Douglas, and still a possibility of some mudslides. But it's been very dry in this area of Mexico, so some of the rain is beneficial, but you don't need it all at once. As you can see, storm right here drifting along the coastal area, so a lot of the coastal ranges, the mountains there, are going to see a lot of rainfall, and we have mentioned 4 inches of rain around Manzanillo. Checking out the information, boating advisories right there along parts of the Mexican coast around Cabo Corrientes. Right there you can see the area shaded in red. That's where some boating.
A tornado warning is in effect for Benton County in Arkansas. That's right there in the northwest corner of Arkansas, a tornado warning. Cave Springs, Arkansas. Now this is in the vicinity of John Brown University. If you're in the path of this storm, then you need to take cover immediately. A very heavy complex of thunderstorms moving out of northeastern Oklahoma, crossing from west Oklahoma in West Siloam Springs, Oklahoma, over into northwest Arkansas. Now again, that is a tornado warning until 7:15 local time for Benton County, Arkansas. If you're in the Fayetteville area, you might it'd be advisable to take cover in that area.
And that's the first month of the hurricane season. We haven't seen anything out in the Atlantic really since hurricane season began that even looked like it might develop into a depression. We did have one depression in the Atlantic, but that was before the season started officially, way back in about the middle of May. It's been much busier than that, though, out here in the eastern Pacific Ocean. As a matter of fact, we have a new depression there, and if that becomes a storm, which seems very likely, we think, within the next 12 to 24 hours, that will be the 5th named storm of the season, and the name will be Elida. Here are the particulars on it, and as we watched the satellite picture this morning, it appears to be getting organized and doing so fairly rapidly, so we don't think this one's going to have much trouble getting organized. It is moving toward the west about 10 miles an hour, and I would point out that that movement is a bit uncertain because we haven't really been able to define the center too well, so we'll just have to wait and see. It's, in any case, centered about 310 miles southwest of Acapulco, and right around Acapulco right there, they've had some pretty heavy rain this morning. So far, we don't have any amounts. Let's put this picture into motion for you just a moment. And I think when we do that, this is what it looked like 12 hours ago. You can see that it does become better organized and that the banding and the thunderstorms are increasing. Right now, though, it is moving away from land, and that much certainly is good news. Let's go now to the Gulf of Mexico. The month of June here without any tropical storm. In the Atlantic, Gulf, or the Caribbean, we don't see anything out there now that we think is likely to develop into anything in the next few days. Not so in the Pacific. It's been rather busy out there, and now, just this afternoon, we have our 5th named storm of the season out there. This is Elida. It's organized fairly rapidly during the day. Top winds now up to 40 miles an hour, centered at 15.5 and 107.0. That's about 480 miles or so from Acapulco. It's moving basically toward the west, a little bit north of west. They we're able to get a bit better handle on the center of it, so it's a little bit farther north than we saw earlier. And right now it looks as if it's going to be far enough from the coast to avoid the worst effects of it. But we would point out that it's been raining rather steadily in Acapulco all day. We don't know just how much rain has fallen there, but it is raining. And just to the west of that, we also have another disturbance. But I think this might be too close to the storm for the one to the west to develop. We'll just have to wait and see. Let's go ahead now and look at the Gulf of Mexico. And as we get, this is Elida down here, and you can see that it is getting better organized all the time. The banding is increasing, the showers are increasing, getting more concentrated. Here in the Gulf, these thunderstorms in the Bay of Campeche are already getting under the outflow from this storm out here, so that's not going to develop any further. Let's go on now farther toward the east and see. We don't have any very disturbed weather in the Atlantic. We don't certainly have anything out there that we're concerned about. Very active though in the Pacific. This is the 5th named storm of the season we've had there. And this is Elida, and the top winds are up to 60 miles an hour. Circulation center right about up here in this neck of the woods. And it's centered some 640 miles to the west-southwest of Acapulco. It continues to move basically toward the west at about 12 to 14 miles an hour. We haven't seen very much of any change in that at all. Let's go ahead and put this into motion for you, and we can see what the motion has been over now about the last 6 or 7 hours we're looking at here. Now, one thing we would point out that we noticed that the tops of the thunderstorms are not as high as they were, therefore not as red. We can't be sure that that means any weakening though, because sometimes during the daytime that happens. We're going to watch this very carefully. It still has a very well organized circulation center, and we can see that on our satellite pictures. Now, as far as rain in Mexico is concerned, we haven't seen any rain reported recently in Acapulco or Manzanillo, which is right about up here. So some rain right along the coast, but most of that now is offshore as this system continues to move on toward the west. Now let's go farther east, and we'll take
activity right now through the intertropical convergence zone, some thunderstorms there, also in the Caribbean and into the Atlantic. But first stop, still have a tropical storm, Elida, and this is the Mexican coast right here. Right now the coordinates at 17.7 north, 110 west. It's about 350 miles south of Cabo San Lucas, the southern tip of the Baja, well up to the north here. Maximum sustained winds at 70 miles per hour. It looks like now we're going to see Elida become a hurricane within the next 12 hours. And right there, that little speck there you see there is the Isla Socorro reporting station there from Mexico. They're right now reporting winds out of the north-northeast. The newest report just in at 41 miles per hour, but they're reporting a lot of drizzle right now. I'm sure in a short period of time that's going to change very much, especially with the center of circulation right there near that island. And right now the pressure is at 1,001 millibars, so it's getting lower. That's why we think the storm here will continue to intensify further as it moves towards the west-northwest and eventually a more westerly track. So could see a lot of heavy rain and winds there for that small island. Elsewhere across the
in the eastern Pacific, we do have a couple of possibly disturbances that could develop farther, but the one thing that really keeping our eye on is just to the north of the intertropical convergence zone, and that's Elida, now a hurricane. Top sustained winds 85 miles per hour, and it's about 270 miles south-southwest of Cabo San Lucas right here. Earlier it was taking more of a northerly course. Now it has turned more to the northwest. The track over about the next 24 hours might show sustained winds or a little bit of strength, and then it will weaken as it heads northwest out over colder water. Let's put this into motion and see what's going on with the hurricane. You can see it just spinning around. It's broken off from the intertropical convergence zone. You can see the center. Actually, this line here is called, or I should say that dot there is not the eye of the storm. It's an island called Socorro. The last report they had was last night, and it looked like it moved directly over that island. Maybe we'll get some reports this morning, see what type of weather they experienced from the hurricane. Let's head to the Gulf and see what's going on.